I get a lot of questions about QMEs. In particular, a lot of my clients want to know, can I get a new QME or can I get a different QME? Can I get a second QME? And today I want to go over some of that stuff. Generally, in a workers' comp case, you're limited to one QME. For those that aren't aware, QME stands for Qualified Medical Evaluator. And generally, you're supposed to go to this QME to address the nature and scope of your injuries. If you have a back injury, for example, you might see a chiropractic QME, a pain medicine QME, or even an orthopedic surgery QME. And ultimately, that QME is required to address any and all injuries to the extent that they can. Oftentimes, however, you have an injury where it's multifaceted, meaning in addition to having, say, a compressed vertebrae in your back, you also have depression, stress, or anxiety. You may even have things like high blood pressure or GERD in reference to medication that you've been prescribed. And ultimately, those things can't necessarily be accurately evaluated by the QME, and so you would need to go to a second QME. It's a bit of a complicated process, and normally to go to a second QME, you either have to have an agreement between the parties, which means that both you and the insurance company have to agree to go to a second doctor, or you have to get an order from the court. And generally, to get an order from the court, you have to show that there's some medical or legal necessity to get that second QME. I can tell you from experience, insurance companies never want to agree to second QMEs, and really the reason is because it costs so much money. Oftentimes, one QME evaluation by itself can cost thousands of dollars. And ultimately what that means is more expenses for the insurance company, which means they're not happy. And so oftentimes it's very difficult to get an insurance company to voluntarily agree to the second panel. More often than not, we actually have to go to court and get the judge's order. And to do that, you have to get the QME to explain that there are certain components of the case that are outside the scope of their specialty. So for example, you would want your QME in orthopedics to say that your heart trouble, high blood pressure is not something within the scope of their specialty, and therefore another QME, in example, internal medicine, would be required to address that component of the case. It is possible, you just need to make sure you do things right, and oftentimes this is best handled by a lawyer. Back to the other question is, what happens if I don't like my QME and I want a different one or a new one? You can get a replacement QME in a case. Oftentimes it's due to unavailability. For example, the QME is sick or not scheduling in time. They maybe even have retired during the middle of your case, and that would be grounds for a new QME. Alternatively, some QMEs aren't great. They're not on your side. They're insurance company oriented. Maybe they're acting in a discriminatory way, or they're not looking at the evidence as it is and looking at factors that shouldn't be relevant, such as your disability status, your gender, your religion, your age. Whatever the case may be, the QME may not like you and they may take it out on you. And if you can prove that the QME is biased, you can actually get the QME kicked off the case. To do that, that generally requires a trial and the matter to be presented before a workers' compensation judge, at which time the judge will review the evidence, review your testimony, as well as the QME report to determine whether there's any bias and whether the QME should be replaced. If you have any additional questions, please follow up with us, www.pacificworkers.com.